Step 2, we're going to image size this new document. And I went to the internet, to seriouswheels.com or to remarkablecars.com, and I opened up that preview JPEG in Photoshop. We are going to now crop it. We're going to add a levels to give a little bit more contrast, and we're going to follow the text edit specifications that are up on top. It says crop to 1 to 1.5 inches around the whole car. That's what I mean by 1 to 1.5 inches, okay? Then image size, make constrained proportions is on, document size to 12 inches, the height will come. Change resolution on the PPI until the file is 40 megabytes. Okay, I'm listening to that. So what I want to do is first go in and hit Option Command I. First, hit the C key. Crop it so that you have about 1 to 1.5 inches all the way around. Now this is all I was given on the right and the left hand side, so that's perfectly good enough. If you're given all of this background that you don't need, crop it until you have a reasonable amount. Don't crop it too tight, but until you have a reasonable amount on the top, bottom, left, and right side. Next thing is go into, and I'll put it on screen a little bit bigger, put it onto image size and get, that's Option Command I. Get this to 12 inches on the width. So change whatever it was to 12 inches. Okay? Now, once you do that, this pixel dimension will change. Then play with the resolution. It'll be 300, 325, 425, 525 for some of you, until this gets to be around. Now I have a bunch of paths already drawn, that's why it's a little bit more, but get it to be 40 megabytes, 38 megabytes, 41 megabytes, around there. Before you begin, make sure constrained proportions is checked and everything will be good to go. Now, how do you set up your file? How you set up your file is as follows. First, I'm going to hit Command L to level this off because it doesn't have enough darkness. It needs a little bit more rich black. And I'm going to build the white up to the first histogram. So you can see how I'm taking this middle value that I'm circling right there up to the first histogram to brighten it up a little bit. I'll bring the black a little bit farther. Now, I'm going to turn the preview off for the image, for the levels. And look at it, looks really dull and grayed out. Now it's got this richness that we're looking for, okay? A little bit less, a little bit darker on the contrast. Okay, that's good. And now I'm going to click OK. First thing you do is double click the background layer so you can actually make it a layer. Now we're going to add a new layer and we're going to put white underneath. White should be your most, let me make the foreground color white. White should be on every one of your files. In other words, I don't want to click on your regular layer and I don't want you to take an opacity back and then I don't want to see that checkerboard background like I just had. That would be a no-no, painting against that. And I don't want you to remove the checkerboard background in the Photoshop preferences. So please click on your new layer that you've named and I'm going to hit Option Delete to fill it with white so you can see I have a nice white layer right there, as you can see. Whoops, let me turn it off. Let's turn that little baby off. Okay. Now I'll double click it and I'll name it white. Please, I am really going to push the organization of the file. I might as well get it out of the way right now because I'll say it a bunch of times. I'm going to save the file. I've already called this Brian's tutorial file. Please name yours, your first name, last name, CarArt1. And save every time you come to class as another one, as a CarArt2 and CarArt3. But listen to this. After every 3 saves, please go to Edit, Purge, All. I'll tell you why. That replenishes the RAM. It cannot be undone, which means it's going to get rid of your history states, which is okay. Just make sure once you've done this, you don't need to go back in history. Okay. The next thing is, let's turn back on the car. We are going to make a, what's referred to, and you guys who have had me for Illustrator know what I mean by a clicky copy. But what you have to do, and I'm going to diminish the opacity from this so you can see my path that I've done. I have drawn out the sheet metal on the car. I have drawn out the sheet metal on the car for every little bit that's there. Let me make sure it all fits. I'm going to raise up the opacity to where, I might as well tell you right now. Let me get close on this so you can see something. Let me hit the V keys and get close. Do you see how if I click on this P key, I'm going to hold the Command Option key and I'm going to highlight this path. That path that I have around the entire sheet metal of this car is never going to be able to be improved. That path is always going to be that faint on the car. Now, if I had all the opacity in the car, like I'm going to put on there right now, you wouldn't see it real well. I know you can see it now, and that's very good, but sometimes the car is so dark that you can't see the path. What I want you to do is draw the path around the whole vehicle to 1 pixel or so, look, 1 pixel or so, or inside the actual sheet metal, okay? So just be as close as you can, just don't be on the outside of it, be on the inside of it by just 1 or so, half a pixel or whatever. Now, what I've done is I've done a couple of paths of this car so that I can isolate out all the sheet metal. I've done this path. I'll make a command click of it just so you can see it, and I'll do this kind of fast. I'll make a command click of it. Now I've done another one down to here, which includes all the stuff that I want to paint. So I'm going to include that one right to here, because that's what I actually want to paint, is that one right to here. Actually a little bit higher than that, right there. Now, I'm going to paint this entire car for you in many different movies, but let's get to it. With this selected, I'm going to duplicate this layer right there. I'm going to call it clicky. And with my selection active, C-L-I-C-K-Y, with my selection active, I am going to hit the Add Layer Mask icon. Now you can see that I've actually let the car be by itself, and all I can see on the car is the sheet metal, and that's what you and I are going to paint for the first few movies, okay? It's just the sheet metal. I'm going to attack all of the detail as the semester goes on, including the lights, including the windows, everything, but for the first movie it's just going to be the sheet metal. So I want you to make a clicky copy just like I have, and it's going to be named clicky. I've made my icons somewhat bigger so you can see them at least on that screen. You rarely are going to have to look at the car with the full background on, okay? But all of your layers go between your bottom layer and your clicky copy. So I'm going to make a layer folder right now and put a bunch of layers in the layer folder, all right? What I'm going to do there is double click the layer folder and call it sheet metal. Now, I have a ton of layers, which I'm going to have probably more, probably up to 10 or 15 or 20 layers in there to accommodate all of the sheet metal color changes. So here's what I want you to have. I want you to have a car that you see here. Then I'm going to actually duplicate the clicky. Look at how I have 2 of them, all right? The top one I'm going to name small color, but what I want to do is I want to click the top one. And I don't really want to do this, but I'm going to bring this over and stretch this out so you can see something. On this one, I want to not have the layer mask. I'm going to enable the layer mask or apply it, all right? Now, by applying it, I've simply made the car by itself. I could do that for the clicky as well, but I'd like to leave it just like that. Now, why I'm doing that is because I want you to have another copy of it. I'm going to call it small color with no spaces. Small color. Try to get no spaces in any of your names. Now let's put this layer palette all the way back over. Let me scoot this over just a little bit farther, and there. Now with the small color selected, I'm going to hit Command T. I have to deselect. Okay, let me click and hit Command T. Whoops. Okay, fine. Let me hit the V key and hit Command T. Oh, okay, there's something going on here, and I have to make sure that I have everything selected. I don't need the transform controls on. I need to deselect. Click away, click back, V key, Command T. Okay, could not transform the path because the selected portion of the path does not enclose. Oh, that's a perfect example of something. I actually have a path selected. If you have a path selected, Command T is going to work for a path. That's a common mistake. When you can't get to somewhere, and it's because I had a pen tool and I clicked, I'm going to dump that path. But when you can't click on a path to turn it off, shift click on the path to turn it off. Now I'm going to throw that away because it doesn't really matter about that path. But now it's going to let me transform this. And believe me, every time you think you got something down, Photoshop's going to say, surprise. So if you hit Command T, but you were selected on a path, it's going to let you transform the path. The problem with me there was I had no path, but I had made a one pen point work path. So let me hit Command T and let me shrink this. When you paint, I constantly want you to have a reference copy to look at. A reference copy that you can make bigger or smaller. Let me hit the V key and move this around. Look at how I can put this down here if I'm working on the top of the car, or up here if I'm working on the horizon down, or down here if I'm working on the front of the car. So I can have this at my beck and call at the highest point of my file. And now that's exactly how I want you to begin this file. I want you to have a smaller version of the car that you can click on and off, because you can eyedrop color from that, because very, very quickly we're going to have nothing but airbrush on top of what you see in front of you right there. So let's go and review real fast. My file is 12 inches wide, 40 megabytes in size, in document size. You have a clicky copy that you can turn off and on just like this. You have a regular copy, your original, right down there, that's at the bottom. You have a white layer that you can turn off and on, and then you start with your layer folders and all of your layers within that layer folder, which we're going to start to name very soon. Let me hit Command S to save the file. And you purge after how many saves? Yes, purge after every 3 saves. That's the it for this movie. We're going to come back and start on the sheet metal for this car.